Who we have here is Mr. Keith Pollard, this gentleman right here, and we have Mr. Arvell Jones, who are both from the Detroit area. And those of you who care enough, the Windsor, Essex County area and the Detroit area, Michigan area is a hotbed for talent in the comic book field. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so would you take a moment, introduce yourselves, and you might want to say something about that hotbed.
You want to go first? Go ahead.
You know, I think in a lot of ways fandom started right here in the Midwest, in Detroit. I remember my first convention. I was much like everybody else out there, you know, just a fan of the industry. And at those conventions, I met some lifelong friends.
How old were you when you started?
I was in high school, so I had to be, I don't know, maybe about 16. Yeah, but you know, my love for comics started when I was probably about 10. You know, when my father put a stack of comics in front of me and some paper. You know.
Yeah. Keith?
Yeah, for me, if you're talking about the love of comics, it was the first time I ever saw a Superman comic book being read by my brother. When I first saw that, I must have been around 5 or 6 years old, and I decided I wanted to draw that character. And I began developing talent drawing from comics.
This is before Marvel Comics, isn't it?
Oh, way old before Marvel. This is in the 50s. So I later, in the 60s, switched over to Marvel. Began drawing Spider-Man. That was my favorite character at that time during my teen years. And slowly developed. But I came into the comic fandom rather late. I didn't meet Mr. Jones until the early 70s at one of the Detroit Triple Fang Fair.
Notice how he addressed him as Mr. Jones.
I gotta give the man his respect.
He does that in front of an audience, you know.
Yeah. And we formed a partnership, which we later went to New York and managed to get work out of Marvel and DC drawing comics.
That's great.
But we weren't the first. There were so many others. Rich Buckler, Jim Starlin, Al Milgram, all came from the Detroit area.
That's true. That's very true. It's a genuine hotbed. Gentlemen, can you relate to your audience, some of the comic titles that you've dealt with, and I know there have been many.
Well, I penciled everything at Marvel just about. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Mighty Thor. Those were a few of my regular titles back in the 70s and 80s. After that, I went to DC. I worked on Green Lantern and a character called the Vigilante, and did quite a few of their characters in various books also. Mr. Jones?
Mr. Jones?
Arvell is fine. Some of the characters I worked on at Marvel were Iron Fist, Iron Man. I was the Iron artist at one point.
They partnered up in some of those comics, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
In fact, me and Keith worked on Iron Man together for a couple of issues, you know, as we were first getting into comics. I did, you know, a What If, did a couple of assistant work on Deathlock, did the Avengers, Thor, you know, at Marvel. At DC, I worked on, I'm best known for All-Star Squadron. I worked on some Legion stories, Supergirl, and some of the other, you know, I won't say minor titles, but, you know, we were doing quarterlies back then, and I would get these 80-page quarterlies to do. We did a Secret Society of Supervillains annual, which was really a lot of fun. I got to
Wonderful
kill
stuff.
all of the major characters.
Wonderful stuff. Gentlemen, this panel is called the Industry Legends, and you are veterans, you are legends. Are you still involved in the industry currently in any way?
Only in doing commissions. I'm not doing any work for any of the major comic book companies at the moment, but I have associated myself with an art agent, and we have a website up. He represents Arvell and I, and we do commissions of comic book characters.
So you are partners?
Yeah, in a sense.
Arvell, do you still dabble in the art, shall we say? You're both artists, correct?
Yeah,
Were you writers as well?
I'd consider myself a writer first, but I haven't, actually I've been published as a writer, except to do my own plots and stories. And Keith has done the same thing, and then they would assign a writer to actually write dialogue. So yeah, I do consider myself. I can consider myself a comic book creator.
I have a writing credit on just one book, Silver Surfer graphic novel, The Enslavers, which I did with Stan Lee. I wrote the story and Stan scripted it.
Well, as veterans and as legends, I'm wondering, do you have the opportunity to sit back and sort of watch the industry unfold or evolve, as you say? Do you have any comment about the way it's going and what's happened with the industry? I mean, you earn the right to have an opinion, you know
Have
that.
an opinion, huh? Well, to be honest with you, I haven't followed it that closely since leaving it, pursuing other projects. I've been most recently working as a storyboard artist on a movie, and I've been out of it quite a bit. I'm aware of some of the changes, but not all of them. So I don't really feel I can make a comment on it.
Okay. How do you feel about a comic book costing $3.99 and $4.99 these days? Because they were what, 35 cents?
True.
When you were doing it?
When I started, I was spending my allowance lunch money, and I could at least get 3 comics, on the quarter that I get, but comics, I guess when I first started, they were 10 cents. I was outraged when they went to 12 cents.
That's right. I understand.
Yeah. So I would say that I'm amazed at where the business has gone. The imagination that's been captured in comics and then in movies and video games. When we started off, we had no idea it was going to go that far. We always predicted that once comics got to be a rage, that they would make great movies and things. But technology had to catch up to what we were doing.
But you guys were in the ground floor of it. You were partly responsible for the way it's grown. Would you not agree? You can take credit for that.
Okay, I'll take credit for it.
There you go. There you go. Anything you care to add, gentlemen, at this point? Because I'm going to throw it out to the floor now.
I'd have to say I kind of regret the fact that some of my heroes in the business aren't here to see what the resurgence has been. Like Jack Kirby, Carmen Infantino, and, just a lot of the people that made comics what they are today, those original creators. I mean, Stan gets a lot of credit, he does, for doing quite a bit, but, there were other heroes in the business, people that got me, excited. Joe Kubert, Joe Orlando, those guys. I think they would be, just shocked at how popular the characters they created have gotten.
Yeah. You mentioned Joe Kubert, and it's my understanding, besides the art school, the comic art school he used to have, that probably still exists, his 2 sons have gone into the industry.
Yeah.
Do you have any siblings or children of yours who have gone into the industry? They follow in your footsteps?
I have a son who is very talented. He hasn't quite made up his mind what type of art he wants to do. But
There you go. And he's an artist.
Yes.
Yeah. My brother, you talk about siblings, he was a letterer at Marvel for a short time, and also worked in production at Valiant Comics for a short time. And he worked as a colorist at Charlton and as a letterer also at Charlton Comics. And he's just amazed at everything. My kids chose to go with technology for the most part and filmmaking, which I'm very proud of them for making that choice as well.
Excellent. You keep giving me leads here. You know that. Speaking of technology, both of you drew and did you ink your own brown pencils?
Yes.
Okay. It's my understanding today that inkers are becoming the albatross of the industry. In other words, because of technology, working on computers and palettes, that it is so precise there's no need for it to be inked. You agree with that? I mean, people are being put out of work here.
There are applications on the computer now that allow you to simulate inking and do it quicker and faster. I agree with that.
Right. So the industry is definitely evolving.
It's
for
evolving.
the better, we hope.
Right.
I know.
It's very hard to sell the original art, though.
That's true. Think about that.
To a degree.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'm going to open it up to the crowd. If you have any questions for these two fine gentlemen, please come forward. I have to hand you the microphone because it's very difficult to hear you up here and vice versa. So come on forward and I'll hand you the microphone. If you have a question, come on. Speak loudly.
I was just wondering if there were any hardships that you faced trying to get into the comic book business. And my second question is afterwards, can I get your autographs?
My advice to you,
Can you repeat the question for the audience?
repeat the question.
Well, more loudly. They didn't hear you. Scream it out.
I was just wondering if you guys faced any hardships trying to get into the comic business. And my second question was, can I get your autograph afterwards?
We didn't face any hardships other than poverty. When we went up to New York, we were taking a gamble. I quit my job. Arvell was lucky enough not to have one at the time, so he came right out of school. And I would say poverty, you have to be determined. Keep trying, don't take no for an answer, keep knocking on that door, wear them down. That's about the only way it works. It doesn't matter how much talent you have if you don't have the perseverance to get the job.
And since you brought up, you're up here asking the question, it's my understanding that there are more and more young ladies and women in the industry than there has been.
Yes.
And the opportunities are greater. Right? Take advantage of them. Great. Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions? Okay, well, since I don't see any, I'm going to draw this panel to a close, and I sincerely want to thank Keith Pollard and Arvell Jones. You are wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for being here today.